A lot of veterans depend on their disability check, their VA to help them. They have no other care. And some of them actually can't go out all the time to do different things, so they depend on all the different services. That's why I'm here. I'm for the veteran and always will advocate 100%. If we was to lose these benefits that we have as a veteran, that's mean our health care. We would have to actually probably go into private sector, and then we wouldn't be able to, a lot of people wouldn't be able to afford it.
Proud to be the home of NIH, but especially proud of what NIH does to help develop treatments and cures for Americans and that benefit people around the world and make us the center for medical research around the world, with all its health benefits, but also with all its economic benefits. And
the disregard for human life, the disregard for national security. Let me just make this abundantly clear to the American people. Secure channels of communication do exist to discuss classified military action. They sure as hell are not a signal group chat. Information like this, it is imperative that it be handled with sensitivity. Under this administration, the United States foreign policy is a failure. Decades of diplomatic efforts to build goodwill and keep the American people safe have been upended. We have an unelected billionaire gutting life-saving programs like USAID's essential work to feed newborns and to get medicine to war zones. And meanwhile, you have a cast of characters in these roles having nothing to do with merit, but simply their fealty and loyalty to Donald Trump, a cast of characters ordering military strikes in a group chat with a random journalist in it. This is nothing to be cavalier about. This is not a drill, it is not a joke, and every person involved should be investigated by Congress. In particular, Pete Hegseth is proving himself to be grossly unqualified to lead the Department of Defense and should have never been confirmed by the Senate. This national security failure is proof that he cannot serve this country's best interest, and I call for Pete Hegseth to resign. I yield.
Netanyahu and his government are now responsible for the murder of over 50,000 Palestinians in the last 16 months. He now has a plan for a ground invasion to fully occupy Gaza. How can we expect Netanyahu's government to stop the mass killings of civilians if we continue to supply the weapons used to carry it out?
The good news is, on the other side of the equation, is that while the Biden administration let guys in flip-flops and John boats run the world shipping lanes around the Horn of Africa there, and essentially defeat the greatest navy on the planet, 60 days in, the Trump administration is sending not only notice, but hard notice that reign of terror by the Houthis is at an end, and that worldwide shipping is going to be free again to move around the planet and not have to worry about being taken captive and prisoner and hostage, or have your ship sunk by some terrorist tied to Iran. That's the good news.
There are two scandals here. You know the first one, the release of these war plans to a reporter, detailed war plans. It compromised the security of that mission. It put our soldiers and airmen in grave danger. There's a level of stunning incompetence within our national security infrastructure today. But the bigger scandal is the gaslighting, is the fact that the Secretary of Defense, the CIA director, the Director of National Intelligence think that the American people are so dumb as to make the claim that they didn't actually send war plans when
endangered lives. As my colleague Don Bacon, a Republican, said, this was unconscionable to share this classified information on Signal app. But on top of that, basically the spinning, not taking ownership of the mistake or the gross negligence that happened here, not taking accountability, means that this is going to happen again. Either it's going to happen in another signal group with these principles, possibly, or it could happen at lower levels as younger people in the forces see what's happening with their bosses and maybe decide, well, maybe I should use Signal, maybe I should use WhatsApp, or worse. And so this endangers America because our adversaries will get a hold of this information, and our sons and daughters in uniform will be at risk.
But the thing I really want to talk about, I'm a former law professor. I started my career prosecuting corporate fraud at the SEC. And what is egregious to me is the sheer lawlessness of this administration across the board, whether it's shredding documents at USAID, whether it's Elon Musk illegally taking over our ID at Treasury and IRS, whether it's this episode. Why were they on Signal in the first place? Why were they not on a secure federal channel?
Mr. Berliner, in his story last year, wrote, in the D.C. area, editorial positions at NPR, he said he found 87 registered Democrats, 0 Republicans. Is that accurate?
We do not track the numbers or the voter registration, but I find that
Was award-winning journalist who worked 25 years at NPR, Mr. Berliner, was he lying when he wrote that?
I am not presuming such. I just don't have, we don't track that information about our journalists.
87 to 0, and you're not biased.
If you had to pick, if you were forced to make a decision, there wasn't enough money to go around, Social Security or NPR.
We know how important public media is to our nation's seniors, sir.
More important than Social Security. I think the American people disagree.
Go ahead.
It's worse than that. It's not 63, it's 87. 87 are registered Democrat voters. There's not one registered Republican voter on the board for NPR. That shows you the bias that they have. You know, Media Research Center has done a lot of reporting. 90% of their reporting has a left-leaning bias and doesn't represent so-called rural America. That
Director Patel, does the FBI have any open investigations into the organization, the leadership, and the funding of these pro-Hamas demonstrations with students such as, and groups such as Students for Justice in Palestine?
Thank you, ma'am. And I'm limited by what the Attorney General has already publicized, but as you know, there are open investigations based on what's been made public.
Okay. Has the FBI uncovered any evidence of foreign support for these Hamas demonstrations, including, other than Iran, any of these groups I might mention, like Students for Justice in Palestine, anything that's open source that we can talk about?
That's still ongoing.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Congresswoman. I think our collection against China as a hard target in the prior administration was lacking in several areas. I would say primarily in human collection, and also with regard to the processing of open source information relating to China. I think part of that relates, Congresswoman, to the policies of the prior administration about treating China as a pacing competitor, I think was the word, as opposed to an adversary. So one of the things in my focus as CIA director, which carried over from my time as DNI, in seeing all of our intelligence, seeing that China is our greatest geopolitical threat, and focusing the CIA specifically more directly in all areas of our collection on China as a hard target.
And if you could each just kind of say, like, either in your view, in your market, the impact that the government incentives are having on what resources come would be either significant, modest, minimal, or any qualification you want to say. Starting with you, Mr. Asmana.
Yeah, I would say they're significant, and the incentives from the federal government are significant, and then our states, different states have different incentives that make a difference as well.
Our economy has been rigged by giant corporations and the wealthiest for way too long. And as these corporations consolidate more power, the rich get richer, and everyone else is just struggling to get by just on the basics. They need groceries, housing, healthcare, basic medications. Private insurance companies are now buying up your local healthcare clinics and doctors' offices. In my home state of Washington, a handful of healthcare systems control 90% of hospital beds.
While our economy is in crisis, while groceries and housing are at an all-time high, while our veterans and our firefighters and our teachers are being illegally fired, while Elon Musk is dismantling the U.S. Department of Education, and while the Secretary of Defense is trying to cover up the most incompetent national security leak I have ever heard of in my life, the Republicans in the House are trying to save the American people from the scourge of walk-in cooler and refrigeration efficiency standards. That's right. We are here wasting precious debate time on the U.S. House of Representatives floor, debating, dismantling efficiency standards for walk-in refrigerators. How out of touch are you with the American people?
For the 42 million Americans on SNAP, monthly grocery bills will rise by $260 a month for a family of 4. And the economy would shrink by $230 billion, costing farmers and ranchers billions, while destroying more than 218,000 jobs.
He says, Mark, you have cancer. And I'm like, you don't have a biopsy yet. How do you know? He said, Mark, I've seen this hundreds of times. You have cancer. And after radiation and resection and chemo, I got to be one of the lucky ones. I'm 9 years cancer-free. But those words will hit you like a freight train.
As the longest-serving Jewish state senator in North Carolina history, Senator Roush was a trailblazer and a man of deep principle. He dedicated much of his life to public service, serving on the Gastonia City Council, chairing the Senate Finance Committee while he was a member of the Senate, and championing racial harmony, education, and fiscal responsibility.
Governor Janet Mills appears to be doubling down.
Sports, it's about who makes the laws and who enforces the laws. I read the Constitution. It doesn't allow him to make laws out of whole cloth by tweet or Instagram post or press release or executive order.
So her remarks come as those who oversee school sports in her state have until tomorrow to comply with Title IX or risk a referral to the Justice Department after the feds found them in violation for allowing biological boys to compete in girls' sports.